This morning when I went for my walk, the weather was gorgeous, the sun was shining and the autumn colours were just beginning to start to show in the trees. So I was inspired to pick up these lovely leaves and use them as the colours for today's work. And I'd already planned to show you how to make these little zigzag cards that I make, which are handy to have for saying thank you to people, or maybe little birthday cards. Instead of doing them in the colours I used earlier in the summer, which were these purples and blues and greens, I'm going to try and find the colours of the leaves in watercolour and make some sheets of paper for making the zigzag books, little zigzag cards. You can see this is the stuff that I make cards out of. It's part of a big sheet that I covered with leaves. So it's going to be some runny watercolour fun. I've used masking fluid and an ink pen as well as a brush, and I've just poured paint on as well in various layers. So I'll show you how to do that, and as usual I'll show you what I'm going to use. I will need a ruler for making the card with at the end, and I've actually cut a little template out of thin paper so that I can just use that to gauge the size of the card and to get the positioning for the folds. So I made a little template. I use Mod Podge, the glue, for sticking the little extra bits on. So, you know, there's like a little heart there stuck on, and then the hearts inside are stuck on with Mod Podge. It's good glue because it doesn't let the paper cockle, it doesn't make the paper cockle like some glues do, and it is a water-based glue, so everything's easy to clean up afterwards. So I've got, just move those out of the way, I've got one of my zigzag marking sheets. I'm going to colour this with watercolour and use that for the paper for cutting shapes out of to add to the finished book. It's only thin cartridge paper, so we'll watch that. That will cockle, but it doesn't matter once it's cut into small shapes and stuck on. A little bit of cockling isn't going to make any difference. And I have got my watercolours with my sample sheet of paper showing what the colours look like, and some watercolour paper, which is quite easy to get hold of. Most of these pads of watercolour paper you get are £140 weight, which is equivalent to 300 grams per square metre. I'm just using a small sheet for now because I think most of you probably have watercolour paper this size. So I pulled a piece out, ready? And having my leaves around for inspiration, I'm going to try and find these colours in my watercolour box. That red, it's a dogwood leaf, and it's pretty much that maroon perylene it's called in what I've got. Obviously you'll have a different set of colours, so maybe just put all your colours out on a piece of paper like this and compare your leaves to the colours you've got. I think that yellow is somewhere between my reddish warm yellow and that really cold yellow there. That yellow of a maple, I suppose it is. I'm not sure actually what that is. Maybe someone will know and tell me. And then of course I don't have a green in my box of paints, but I will be using, I think, one of the two cool blues mixed with the yellow. Definitely going to go for a mixture of the warm and the cool yellow, and then probably put in maybe a mixture of the two cool blues and see what happens. This is a lovely leaf. This is quite interesting because there were two other leaves overlapping it, one there and one there, and where the sun's shone in between them it's developed red, and then there was the areas that have been protected by the other leaves. It's almost like a photograph. the sun has developed this area, and these areas have been protected from the sun. Isn't that lovely? I'm going to start off with some masking fluid, which I'm going to put on with a long matchstick, which I've sharpened to a point. I find it's much easier to put it on with a stick or a nib rather than a brush, because it never comes out of the bristles of a brush really well. So this stuff doesn't last very well. Once it's opened, it seems to form a big hard clump and then dries up and you can't use it. So what I do, once I've got it open, one of those child-proof tops, you can hear it clicking away. There we go, got it open. I'll pour some out into, I think this is just the bottom of a plastic bottle. Pour some out, and then the remainder of that's going to get thrown away, because it's no good pouring it back into here, because I think that's one of the things that makes it lumpy and clump up and not last so long. So that's the first tip for today. Take out, as you know, a big teaspoonful of masking fluid, and that'll be plenty to work with. And then I can do some leaf shapes on the paper first. Well, that's a sheet of white paper with white masking fluid on, which you'll have to take my word for, because you can't see those leaves at all, can you? Anyway, I'm just going to splash a few random drops on as well, which I'll just add a bit of, sparkle. Splash some on the leaf there. Drops on quite nicely. Just makes little round speckles, which are going to look pretty. Anyway, you will see the leaves appear like magic when I put the paint on, but I have to let everything dry, and that's going to take about an hour, so I'll be back. I've squeezed some more of this cool yellow out of the tube. This is how I keep my tube paints. I squeeze them out into a palette or into the little empty containers in a box like this. And when I've finished painting, I just leave the box open and the pan's dry enough to be able to close it. Sometimes they do move around a bit, and gets a bit messy in there. But usually I don't take this box out of the studio, so it doesn't get tipped up very much. So I've got the warm yellow and the cool yellow. I'm just going to put them both on the paper, let them mix. So you'll see both the colours and the mixture of the colours. Lovely big brush I've got here. I've had this brush a while and not used it very much. Just Beautiful shape it's got. It's an extra large oval wash by the SAA. Just squeezing the water out so it doesn't dilute my colour too much. Oh, okay. There you go. I wonder if you can see those leaves a bit now. So I'm really just going to splosh the colour on really loosely and just enjoy the way it blends together. And I can feel it hitting my retina. It feels absolutely beautiful. It's a very rich, glorious colour, that. And of course I'm not trying to copy the leaves, I'm just inspired by the colours that are around at the moment. And there's going to be a lot of waiting for paint to dry, because I don't want to just to make a mush of colours all mixing together. I want to have lots of overlapping layers where you can see some of the brush marks underneath. And these little round splashes, if I just paint some more paint, they'll disappear so I've got to wait until they've dried before I can put some more colour on. So it's going to be a lot of stopping and going doing something else while the paint dries. And every time I turn the video back on, I think you can probably see that the leaves have curled up a little bit more. It's interesting, the passing of time. Perhaps it's time for a little run. Nice. The wandering lines you get when you let paint dribble. What I need to do now is let that completely dry, fill in all the white bits of paper, and then when that's dry I can take the masking fluid off and add another couple of layers. It really gets better and better the more layers you put on. And while it's drying, I'll put some of the darker red and green on this piece of my zigzag mark making paper. This is a chance to play with mark making with brushes as well. It's interesting to explore the different ways that the brush works when you go from right to left or left to right. You use the tip of the brush or the side of the brush, or push it right down and wiggle it about. All the sort of things that you perhaps wouldn't think of doing if you were painting a picture, so to speak. Always end up putting a few splashes on. Do go everywhere, so you need to be careful that you've not got anything precious around. This is more or less all dirty water going on there now, just because it's interesting to do. And while that's wet, let's get a bit more of this green, really dark dirty sort of green. That's quite nice. It's looking quite like the green part of that leaf. As it mixes with the red, it goes more brownish. Perhaps I'll wait for that to dry before I put any more of the green on. So now that I'm sure I've got all the white paper covered and everything is absolutely bone dry, that's really important that the whole paper should be bone dry right the way through. Then I can take the masking fluid off. It'll take quite a while because you have to be careful not to rush it and rip the paper It's also important not to leave it on for too long, because if you do part of this job and then leave it for more than a week or so, it goes all hard, and when you try and peel it off, it sticks too much to the paper and tears off. There you can see. This is just nice and elasticy and stretchy. And where it's pulling off, it leaves white paper behind. And then what I'm going to do is to put a little bit more pale colours, thin paint over, so that some of those white lines will be a little bit covered over by the pale coloured paint. So they won't all be white lines, some will be pale coloured lines, like you can see on this one. Find a bit where you can see that. There we are. See the lines there of the masking fluid, those paler lines. Oh, there it's white paper, and here it's got another layer of paint over it, and here as well you can see a little bit where the masking fluid is on that one. And then finally I'll use my pen to draw the leaf shapes in nice and crisp. Okay, all the masking fluid is off, so I'm just going to go back with that bright, cool yellow, and I'll just go down the middle of the leaves. Just go with your instinct. I didn't know I was going to do that until I did it. I think this is probably quite a nice way to semi-organise this layer of paint. Quite like what it's doing. In the central vein of each leaf is a colour, and the edges and the veins are going to stay white, I think. Yes, I do like this effect. Started off with everything the other way up, didn't I? When I first started drawing the leaves with masking fluid, it was this way up, because I remember that was the first one I did. Oh yes, I do like that. It just makes me feel like I did this morning when I was on my walk. Those lovely colours. Just going to go in between some of them with this warmer yellow. Let it dry once more. And sit down with my ink pen and draw the shapes of the leaves with a black line. The zigzag piece of paper is going to be a real contrast with the bright colours of the leafy piece of paper, which is what I want. This is much more dull, isn't it? Those colours on the leafy piece of paper are very bright, so I wanted to produce something really different, so that whatever shapes I cut out of this and stick onto the other one don't just disappear into it. I was beginning to feel it was a little bit too drab and a bit gloomy, so I pop a little bit of yellow in here and there. It's amazing how just colour can create a mood. I think that yellow is nice just to cheer it up a little bit. It's not bright, not as bright as the other sheet of paper, but I didn't want it to be too sad looking. Okay, let's see them next to each other. Yeah, it's quite a nice contrast.